The rain, a relentless metronome against your window pane, scores the quiet of your small apartment. Each drop a tiny, insistent drumbeat echoing the hollow space where ambition once resided. You trace the path of a stray bead of condensation with a calloused thumb, the glass cool beneath your touch, a stark contrast to the low burn in your chest. The hour is late, or perhaps early, a temporal blur in the life you now inhabit. A life meticulously stripped of its former urgency. Dust motes dance in the weak glow cast by the street lamp filtering through the blinds, illuminating the quiet surrender of forgotten things. A stack of unread paperbacks, a chipped mug cradling the ghost of coffee. The framed commendation certificate turned face to the wall. Your career, a meticulously constructed edifice, crumbled with the Miller case, leaving behind only the cold ash of reputation and the bitter taste of blame. They called it the Corbin case in the end, a convenient label for a failure that was entirely yours, or so they insisted. You rise, the floorboards groaning a familiar complaint beneath your weight. Each morning you build it anew, brick by brick, with the mundane rituals of solitude. The strong black coffee, the worn newspaper, the endless staring out at a city that rushes on without you. The city, once your hunting ground, now a distant, indifferent hum. Then the shrill, jarring clamor. Your phone, a relic you rarely touch, screams from the kitchen counter. You eye it with a weary suspicion, a trespasser in your carefully constructed peace. No one calls anymore, not really. Not unless... You pick it up. The voice on the other end is strained, familiar, a ghost from a past you'd rather forget. It's the detective, a younger man you'd once mentored, his voice tight with an urgency that pierces your self-imposed exile. Seth, it's happened again. Your knuckles whiten around the phone. The rain outside intensifies, a sudden downpour mirroring the storm gathering within you. Happened again? Your voice is a rasp, unused to the sudden intrusion of purpose. The signature, Seth. The way they were left. It's the same. Unofficially, of course. You had seen it then, recognized the pattern, but no one had listened. Not until it was too late. And now it was too late again. Where? You demand, the word torn from you, a primal sound. An old financial hub. The midnight trading floor with dead screens. He gives you the address, a series of numbers that feel like a death knell. They found them about an hour ago. A knot tightens in your gut. You tell yourself to refuse, to stay within the safe confines of your broken life. The determined part of you, the part you thought was dead, stirs, a dormant predator scenting blood. The drive is a blur of rain-streaked asphalt and neon reflections. The city, usually a symphony of light and noise, feels muted, hushed, as if holding its breath. You navigate through the slick streets, the old habits of emergency response kicking in, a muscle memory you thought long atrophied. The building looms, a skeletal structure of glass and steel, its higher floors lost in the low-hanging cloud cover. Flashing blue and red lights stain the wet pavement, painting the scene with an eerie, pulsing glow. Uniformed officers mill about, their faces grim beneath the brim of their caps, their hushed conversations swallowed by the rain. You flash your old, expired badge, a defiant gesture more than a practical one, to a young officer who looks at you with a mixture of confusion and deference. He points you towards an unmarked entrance, a service elevator that groans its ascent. The doors open with a shudder, revealing a vast, cavernous space. Cables snake across the floor like dormant serpents, connecting nothing to nowhere. The air is still, heavy with the scent of ozone and something sickly sweet, metallic. Ahead, a cluster of figures huddles, their voices low, reverent. The chief, his face a mask of weary resignation, nods curtly in your direction. The detective, your former protege, meets your gaze, his eyes wide with a familiar horror. He doesn't need to say anything. The scene speaks for itself. Your breath catches in your throat. There, amidst the silent screens, a figure lies. A canvas of meticulously orchestrated despair. The victim, a woman, her features serene in death, as if he had simply drifted off to sleep. Your world narrows to this single, terrible tableau. It's him, the phantom you failed to catch, the ghost that haunts your waking hours. He never left. He was just waiting. The signature is unmistakable, a cruel, mocking flourish from a past that refuses to stay buried. The precision, the quiet violence, the absolute control. It is a mirror image of the Miller case, a perfect, horrifying echo. The game has begun again, and this time, you know the player. He has returned, and he is waiting for you. The cruel, mocking signature etched itself into your vision, a brand across the retina of your mind. It was not merely the arrangement of the body, the precise, almost artistic placement amidst the scattered debris of financial ambition. No, it was the small, deliberate flourish, a single crimson-stained playing card tucked beneath the victim's left hand, its face a king, reversed, staring blankly at the polished floor. This detail, insignificant to any other eye, screamed a silent, guttural truth into your soul. The king of lies. The phantom's calling card, identical to the one found years ago beneath the first victim. The air hummed with the ghosts of failed trades, of fortunes lost and won, now thick with the scent of sterile disinfectant and something metallic, something far more primal. The screens, once vibrant with fluctuating numbers, now presented an array of dead black mirrors reflecting the harsh, unforgiving glare of the crime scene lights. Each monitor was a tombstone, marking the end of a trajectory, both financial and, now, mortal. You stood there, a pariah amidst the uniformed figures, a shadow of the man who once commanded such scenes. The lead detective, a younger man whose face you vaguely recalled from some distant, less tarnished era, approached, his gaze a mixture of professional courtesy and thinly veiled judgment. Seth Corbin. He stated, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," you replied. Your voice a gravelly whisper, barely audible above the hushed movements of the forensic team. Your eyes, however, never truly left the king of lies. But some things, they have a way of pulling you back. He nodded slowly, a flicker of something akin to understanding, or perhaps just resignation, crossing his features. "It's a mess. Clean, precise. No forced entry, no struggle, just this." He gestured vaguely at the tableau. "And the card. Forensics is baffled. Says it's a unique signature." Unique. They had no idea. You wanted to tell him, to scream the truth of the past into his oblivious face, but the words stuck, heavy with the weight of your own failure. Your reputation, shredded to ribbons, precluded such an outburst. Who would believe the disgraced detective, the man who let the first one slip away? As if summoned by your internal struggle, a figure detached itself from the periphery of the scene. It was an older woman, her face a roadmap of grief and determination, her eyes red-rimmed but fiercely alight. She moved with a desperate urgency, pushing past a uniformed officer who made a half-hearted attempt to stop her. His gaze, raw and unwavering, locked onto yours. "You," he rasped, his voice thick with unshed tears, yet resonant with an undeniable authority. "You're Seth Corbin, aren't you? The detective who handled the other case, the one with the card." Your shoulders stiffened. The lead detective turned, a frown creasing his brow. "Ma'am, you can't be here. We need you to wait outside." She ignored him, her focus absolute, a laser beam cutting through the sterile air directly to you. "My brother. He was a good man. He didn't deserve this. They said the police have no leads. But I remembered the news stories. About you. About a similar crime years ago. Her voice cracked, but her resolve held firm. They said you were obsessed, that you knew things no one else did. The accusation in her words was a double-edged sword, a reminder of your past failings, yet also a plea for the very insight that had become your undoing. You could feel the eyes of the other officers, the forensic technicians, the lead detective, all weighing you down. This woman, the victim's sister, was making a public spectacle, dragging your tainted history into the present, demanding a reckoning. Ma'am, I'm no longer involved in investigations, you stated, your gaze drifting back to the dead screens, reflecting your own lost career. But you were. She countered, stepping closer, her hand reaching out, a trembling claw of desperation. You saw the first one. You understand the pattern, don't you? That you had him in your sights. A sharp intake of breath from the lead detective behind her. The woman had indeed done her homework. But I know you see it. The same meticulous cruelty, the same silent mockery. You're the only one who can understand this. You're the only one who can stop him. Her words, sharp and insistent, pierced through the layers of your carefully constructed detachment. The phantom killer, the ghost you had believed vanished, had returned. And now, this woman, a living embodiment of the new victim's sorrow, was offering you a lifeline, or perhaps a noose, a spark, a determination, long dormant, ignited in the desolate landscape of your resolve. You looked from the king of lies to the grieving sister, and back to the dead screens that mirrored your ruined life. He was here. He never left. And neither, it seemed, could you. The cold that had seeped into your bones, a familiar companion, now sharpened into an icy blade. You had tried to bury it, to let the dust settle over the ghost of your career, but the earth had refused to hold. The phantom had returned, and with it, the gnawing certainty that this time, you would not look away. Official channels were a rusted cage, a barrier you could no longer breach. You needed eyes, ears, and hands that operated beyond the glare of the badge. A call, made from a burner phone bought for cash, whispered into the void, reaching a ghost from your own past. A former colleague, now a keeper of secrets, a quiet archivist of the city's underbelly. He didn't ask why. He knew. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight that pierced the grime-streaked windows, illuminating the vast emptiness, the silent testament to ambitions both realized and ruined. The former colleague, once a sharp-suited hound of the law, now wore the weary cloak of anonymity, his eyes holding the same haunted knowledge as your own. You cleared a space, the dust blooming into tiny clouds, and he emptied the bag. Manila folders, aged and brittle, spilled onto the desk. The Archer case. Your own meticulous notes, the same meticulousness that had led to your downfall, stared back at you. What the official channels are letting out. Your fingers, calloused from years of gripping a pen, not a weapon, traced the margins of your old reports. The victims. All professionals, all meticulously staged. A calling card of perverse artistry. You remember the sleepless nights, the maps covered in pins, the endless theories that led nowhere. Now you open the fresh file. The new victim. A young architect found in her loft apartment. The initial reports, skeletal as they were, painted a familiar tableau. The same meticulous staging. The same eerie absence of forced entry. It was him. Or a meticulous copycat. But your gut, a primal drumbeat, insisted it was the former. You spread the files across the desk, a morbid mosaic. You compared photographs, the grainy images of the past alongside the sharper, clinical shots of the present. You scoured victim profiles, looking for the common thread you'd missed. You remembered the old debates, the arguments with the detective, the blind alleys. What did they all have in common? Beyond their professional success, beyond their quiet lives. Your gaze snagged on a detail in the new victim's file. A seemingly innocuous note from the initial responding officer. Small, intricate carving found on a bookshelf appeared to be a stylized arrow made of polished river stone. Your breath hitched. River stone. You flipped back through your old files faster now, a frantic search. You remembered a fragment of a conversation, a throwaway line from a witness in the very first Archer case, dismissed as irrelevant. He had a small collection of polished stones, the victim did. Kept them on his desk. And another. She liked to collect things from nature, the victim's sister said. Driftwood, smooth pebbles. It wasn't a direct find at the scene, not a killer's signature left behind. It was something connected to the victims, something subtle, almost personal. A specific type of object, common enough to be overlooked, yet distinct in its natural origin. The old case reports mention no such thing left by the killer, only what was found in the victims' homes. But the new report, in its sparse detail, mentioned a carving, an arrow, made of river stone. Arrow. The pieces, previously scattered, began to coalesce. Not a direct calling card left by the killer, but a selection criteria, an obscure fascination he exploited. He wasn't just targeting professionals. He was targeting individuals with a specific, almost hidden appreciation for a certain natural aesthetic. An intimate detail, easily missed by those focused on the grander, more macabre aspects of the crimes. The killer wasn't leaving a physical arrow. He was selecting victims who already had a connection to the imagery or the material. He was finding people whose private worlds resonated with his own twisted symbolism. This was the overlooked detail, the subtle discrepancy. The Archer wasn't just a moniker for the killer's precision. It was a deeper, more insidious connection to his victims' lives. He wasn't planting the arrow. He was finding it, already there in plain sight, a silent nod to his prey. It wasn't just a return. It was an evolution. He had always been there, hidden in the details, meticulously selecting his targets based on an unseen thread. The city slept, oblivious. But you, Seth Corbin, now saw the faint, almost invisible string connecting the dead. A string woven from polished stone and etched feathers. The Phantom had not merely returned. He had revealed a deeper layer of his cruel game. And now, you had a single fragile thread to pull. The hunt, long dormant, had begun anew. The feather, the arrow. They have taken root, a tendril of understanding unfurling in the desolate garden of your focus. Not a signature, you now know, but a filter. The killer, a connoisseur of the arcane, sought not random prey, but souls attuned to a specific veiled fascination. The realization, cold and precise, sends a shiver through the hollow chambers of your resolve. The phone, a sudden jolt, shatters the pre-dawn stillness. The caller, a former colleague whose voice still carries the faint echo of the precinct's fluorescent hum, offers no pleasantries. Seth? The detective's voice, tight with urgency, clips through the receiver. You need to see this. It's different. Personal. A location is offered, cryptic and precise. A place of dormant power, now hushed and vacant. A place where fortunes once swelled and crashed, now only holds the ghosts of ambition. You arrive under a sky bruised purple with the promise of dawn, the air sharp and metallic. The address leads you to a monolithic structure of glass and steel, its facade reflecting the nascent light like a dead eye. Here, in this cathedral of defunct capitalism, a single spotlight, stark and theatrical, illuminates a central desk. Your breath catches, a ragged gasp clawing at your throat. Upon the polished surface, meticulously arranged, lies a tableau designed to pierce you. A tarnished, silver-framed photograph, its glass cracked, depicts a young woman with a hopeful, almost defiant smile. But it is not just the photo that ensnares your gaze. Beside it, laid with deliberate care, rests a single arrow. You recognize them instantly, a searing jolt of memory. Not just any feathers, but the distinct primary feathers of a resplendent quetzal, a bird native to the cloud forests of Central America. Eleanor Vance, in her brief, brilliant life, had been an amateur ornithologist. Her passion for the elusive quetzal, an almost sacred secret shared only with a handful, yourself included. A knot of ice forms in your stomach, tightening with each beat of your heart. How could this killer know? How could they possess such a specific, intimate detail of Eleanor's life? A detail tied so closely to your own past investigation? Waiting for you, Seth. Your eyes trace the contours of the feather, the meticulous craftsmanship of the fletching. This isn't just a calling card. It's a message etched in your deepest regret. The killer knows you, knows your failures. This is a personal vendetta, a meticulously orchestrated campaign to dismantle you piece by agonizing piece. The killer isn't just playing a game. They're rewriting your history, using your own memories as their twisted script. The pressure builds, a suffocating weight on your chest. You are no longer merely an investigator. You are a target, and the game has just begun. The feather, a phantom weight in your palm, whispers secrets you've spent a decade trying to forget. The killer knows you, knows your failures, knows the specter that haunts your waking hours. The morning sun, thin and pale, finds you in the precinct's sterile glare. The lead investigator, a man whose ambition gleams brighter than his badge, gestures towards a holographic projection. On it, a face, unfamiliar, yet now irrevocably linked to your nightmare. We have our man, Corbin, the lead investigator states, his voice clipped, confident. A former colleague of the victim, disgruntled, fired a few months back for embezzlement. Plenty of motive, means, and a rather convenient lack of alibi for both incidents. You listen, a hollow echo in your gut. They speak of a disgruntled former employee, a man named Marcus Thorne, who once worked alongside the recent victim. The narrative is neat, too neat. A colleague chimes in, detailing the financial irregularities, the bitter departure, the public threats Thorne allegedly made. The pieces fit, forming a plausible, if shallow, mosaic of guilt. They have found a discarded burner phone near the second crime scene, registered briefly to a fictitious name, but with call logs that link it to Thorne's known associates just days before the murder. A small but critical detail, a unique, rare alloy dust found on the victim's clothing, also traces back to a specialized manufacturing plant where Thorne briefly worked years ago. It's enough, more than enough for them. You observe the projection, the man's face a canvas for their assumptions. Your mind, however, is already miles away, replaying the meticulous craftsmanship of the feather, the deliberate placement of the old calling card. This wasn't the work of a man fueled by impulsive rage or simple greed. This was orchestrated. What about it? The lead investigator waves a dismissive hand. A copycat, perhaps. Or a deliberate misdirection by Thorne to confuse the trail, knowing your history with that old case. We're focusing on what's tangible, Corbin. What fits the evidence we have now. The word tangible grates, a dull knife against your skin. You will not let them close this case on a lie, not again. The specter demands more. Your investigation begins where theirs ends, at the edges of the official narrative. It's a place you wouldn't expect a killer to linger, but perhaps a place a killer would exploit. The building itself is a glass and steel tomb, reflecting the city's indifferent glow. The security guard, a man whose face holds the weary sag of too many forgotten nights, barely acknowledges your presence as you flash your old, still valid credentials, He simply nods, waving a disinterested hand towards the elevators. You ascend, the lift a silent cage carrying you towards the heart of the quiet desolation. Rows upon rows of monitors, their screens black and lifeless, stretch into the gloom. Chairs sit askew, as if their occupants vanished mid-trade. Dust motes dance in the faint light filtering through vast windows, illuminating the forgotten keyboards, the tangled cables, the husks of coffee cups. You move through the labyrinth of cubicles, your senses hyper-alert, searching for an anomaly, a disruption in the perfect stillness. The official report stated Thorne was last seen here clearing out his desk, a bitter spectacle for his former colleagues. But your mind isn't on Thorne's anger. It's on the killer's meticulousness. You find his old workstation, a corner cubicle overlooking the city lights. A few personal effects remain, overlooked by the cleanup crew. A cheap plastic pen, a crumpled note about a dry cleaner, an empty packet of antacids. Nothing. You run your hand over the cool, dead screen, a mirror reflecting your own haunted face. Then, your fingers brush against something wedged deep in the narrow crevice between the monitor stand and the desk. Something small and rigid. You extract it carefully, your breath catching. It's a fragment of a punch card, not a modern digital key, but an archaic relic from early computing systems, a language of holes and patterns. The lead investigator dismissed the feather as a copycat, a red herring. But this is no random discard. This fragment, so out of place in this digital graveyard, vibrates with an older energy. You remember the old case files, the obscure details, the killer's fascination with forgotten technologies, with codes that spoke volumes only to those who understood their peculiar grammar. You turn the punch card fragment over. On its blank side, etched with a fine, almost invisible line, is a single stylized symbol. It's not a letter, not a number, but a twisted, elegant knot. A knot you've seen before, hidden in the background of a photograph from the first victim's study. A decorative element on an antique clock. A detail so subtle, so insignificant, it had been dismissed as mere ornamentation. This isn't about Marcus Thorne's embezzlement or his petty revenge. This is about a mind far more intricate, far more patient. You. And this fragment, found in a place where it should not exist, tells you one undeniable truth. The killer wants you to find them. And they are playing a game far more dangerous than anyone in this city yet understands. The air, heavy with the ghosts of frantic trades and whispered fortunes, feels thin, almost brittle. Above, the city lights bleed through the expansive windows, painting the dead monitors with a sickly, bruised glow. You are a solitary sentinel in this temple of abandoned ambition, surrounded by the silent, judging faces of monitors that once screamed with data. Your breath fogs in the cool air as you lean over a makeshift command center. A cleared desk piled high with case files. Each folder, a tombstone for a life extinguished. Each photograph, a shard of shattered reality. You need something tangible, something they missed, something that sings the truth of the phantom. You run a hand over the glossy surface of a crime scene photo from the most recent atrocity. The victim, splayed amidst shattered glass and scattered ledgers. A macabre still life. Your gaze drifts, sweeping past the obvious, past the blood, past the chaos. You search the periphery, the overlooked corners, the places where a hurried eye would see only background noise. The wall, chipped paint. The floor, scuffed linoleum. The window frame, scarred by weather and time. Nothing. Just the expected detritus of violence. The victim found in a similar state of disarray years ago in a different part of the city. You remember the official conclusion, the convenient narrative. You remember your own gnawing doubt, the feeling that a crucial thread had been severed before it could be followed. You zoom in on the digital image, pushing the pixels to their breaking point, searching for a ghost in the machine. A glint of something out of place. Your finger traces the edge of a mahogany desk in the old photograph, a surface marked by 1,000 tiny scratches from years of use. One scratch, though, catches your eye. A perfect, straight line. Too precise to be accidental, too deliberate to be random. It runs horizontally, a stark, clean incision. You dismiss it at first as mere damage, a careless pen stroke, a forgotten tool. But the image lingers, a burr beneath the saddle of your attention. You flip through the current case photos again, your eyes now honed, searching for that specific, almost surgical precision. You ignore the larger details, the obvious signs of struggle. Your focus narrows to the edges, the frames, the thresholds. And then, there it is. On the chipped paint of a door jamb near the recent victim, a mark. Not a scratch, not a gouge, an incision. Finer than the one in the old photo, perhaps, but undeniably similar in its deliberate horizontal straightness. A clean, unwavering line, as if drawn with a ruler and a razor. Your breath hitches. No. It's too subtle, too easily overlooked. A coincidence. A trick of the light. You remember the third victim, the one whose death had been the final nail in your professional coffin. You dredge up the mental images from the evidence locker, the blurry photos from the initial scene, the hastily scrawled notes in your own hand. You remember a small, almost imperceptible score mark on the underside of a ledger, dismissed by the lead detective as a manufacturing defect. The same precise horizontal incision. Your fingers tremble as you open the digital files for all three cases, arranging the key photos on the dead screens, their dormant faces now reflecting your frantic search. You zoom in pixel by pixel on each of the small, deliberate marks. The desk in the first case, the door jamb in the latest, the ledger in the third. They are identical. Not in size, not in depth, but in their intent. Each is a single, clean, horizontal line. A perfect, unwavering cut. A signature etched not in blood, but in the mundane fabric of the scene itself. Your mind races, a storm of connections. Why this mark? What does it mean? A single line, a break, a division. You remember an old colleague, a former forensic accountant, who used to joke about the perfect cut, the point where a ledger was balanced, or a deal was closed, or a debt was settled. He'd even had a peculiar habit of drawing a single, precise line through a completed task in his notebook. A ledger, a balance, a debt. Suddenly the pieces clatter into place, a horrifying mosaic. The victims weren't random. They weren't just targets of opportunity. They were chosen, not for who they were, but for what they represented. Each of them, in their professional lives, had been involved in transactions, decisions, or systems that had led to profound imbalances. Profits for some, ruin for others. Gains built on losses. The first victim, a venture capitalist who had liquidated a struggling startup, leaving hundreds jobless. The second, a commodities trader known for his aggressive short selling, profiting from market crashes. The most recent, a corporate lawyer specializing in hostile takeovers, dismantling companies with ruthless efficiency. And the mark, the single, clean, horizontal line. It wasn't just a signature, it was a statement. The killer wasn't just taking lives, they were balancing a ledger. Each victim, a debit entry, an account settled. This isn't just a killer. This is an architect of retribution. Someone with a meticulous mind, an unwavering sense of justice or twisted vengeance, and a profound understanding of the financial world. They are correcting. The determination that had settled deep within your bones now sharpens into a grim certainty. You are hunting a meticulous, methodical force, an entity that believes it is setting the world right, one precise, fatal incision at a time. And you, Seth Corbin, are finally seeing the balance sheet. Your fingers, however, dance across a forgotten terminal, a relic from a previous era, its data still miraculously intact. A forgotten subroutine, an archived audit trail from decades past, unspools across the green-on-black display. But the recipient of those final, almost imperceptible trickles of capital, a private investment fund, still exists. Its address, a discreet postal box, now sits etched into your memory, a fragile thread leading into the labyrinth. The city outside is a hushed beast, its nocturnal breath visible in the wisps of fog clinging to streetlights. The address leads you to a block of venerable stone, where old money roosts in buildings that refuse to age. You circle the block, a phantom in the urban twilight, observing the rhythm of the street. A lone cleaner emerges from a neighboring establishment, dragging a bin, and in that fleeting moment, the lock on the service entrance, a sturdy but old-fashioned mechanism, catches your attention. Your fingers, long accustomed to such clandestine negotiations, remember their forgotten language. A click, almost imperceptible, and the door yields, a whisper in the night. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of aged paper, polished mahogany, and a faint metallic tang of something almost electrical. The building is a mausoleum of wealth, its corridors hushed, carpeted, absorbing all sound. You find the main office, a vast chamber dominated by an imposing desk. He's older than you remember, silver at the temples, but his eyes, sharp and unblinking behind wire-rimmed spectacles, retain their hawk-like intensity. He's poring over a ledger, his movements precise, almost ritualistic. Your presence is a sudden rupture in his solitary vigil. His head snaps up, not with surprise, but with an unnerving, practiced calm. "You?" the financier says, his voice a low, gravelly rasp without a hint of question. "Seth Corbin, I thought you were a ghost." You step fully into the light, your stance firm, your gaze unwavering. Some ghosts refuse to stay buried, especially when new graves are being dug. A thin smile plays on his lips, devoid of warmth. A poetic sentiment, uncharacteristic of your usual bluntness if memory serves. "What brings you to my humble sanctum, detective?" The word detective is laced with a subtle venom, a reminder of your fall. The names, the victims, they share a thread, a financial one, and it leads here. You lay out the fragment of information from the trading floor, the shell company, the fractional transfers. It's a gamble, a test of his composure. The financier's eyes narrow, his fingers drumming a slow, deliberate rhythm on the leather-bound ledger. Fascinating. A ghost chasing other ghosts. You see phantoms in ledgers, Seth. These are complex financial instruments, perfectly legal, if discreet. Discreet enough to hide a killer's motive? You challenge, pushing him. Or to hide the true nature of what these victims were involved in. He leans back, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his jaw. The victims, they were all players in a particular game, yes. High stakes, high risk. Not just money, but information, leverage. There's a unique signature to their work, a method of asset securitization that few truly understand. Ghost share. That was the missing link. Not just money, but a specific, almost arcane financial mechanism that bound them. This wasn't about theft. It was about something far more intricate. The killer wasn't just targeting the wealthy, but those who understood and exploited this particular invisible currency. You know who created these ghost shares. You state, a quiet certainty in your voice. I know of the architect. A brilliant mind, obsessed with the purest forms of hidden value. He saw the world as a series of interconnected, exploitable data streams. He called himself the archivist. He believed in the ultimate preservation of all data, all secrets. Just then, a distant chime echoes through the building. The elevator, arriving on this floor. The financier's eyes widen in genuine alarm. Security, they're making their rounds. He lunges across the desk, Not at you, but for a discreet button hidden beneath its lip. You react on instinct, sweeping a heavy brass paperweight from the desk and bringing it down on the back of his hand just as his finger brushes the button. He cries out, a sharp, choked sound. Footsteps grow louder, approaching the office door. You snatch a single loose page from the financier's ledger, a page filled with arcane symbols and a specific coded sequence you don't yet understand, but which you know holds another piece of the puzzle. The door handle rattles. The metallic tang in the air suddenly makes sense. The sharp, choked cry of your former superior echoes. A brief, ugly sound swallowed by the cavernous quiet. The brass paperweight clatters, rolling with a metallic whisper across the polished desk, a grim punctuation mark to your desperate act. His hand, now a mangled mass, retracts from the hidden button, blood already blooming across his knuckles, a vivid stain against the pale wood. Footsteps grow louder, a rhythmic thudding on the carpeted corridor, accelerating. They are coming for you. There is no time for explanation, no moment for the slow dance of interrogation. You seize his collar, the expensive fabric rough beneath your grip, and haul him from behind the desk. He stumbles, a groan escaping his lips, his face contorted not just by pain, by a dawning fury. You fool, he hisses, you've ruined everything. You ruined it first, you retort, your voice a low growl pushing him forward, past the silent cubicles, past the glass-walled offices where phantom traders once toiled. The footsteps are closer now, just outside the door to this executive antechamber. You glance back, a fleeting image of the heavy oak door, then pull him through the wide opening into the main expanse of the building. A vast, silent ocean of dormant technology stretches before you, an eerie monument to ambition and despair. The hum of the distant server room is the only sound, a low, mechanical heartbeat in the stillness. It smells of stale coffee and ozone, a ghost scent of frantic days. Why? You demand, twisting his arm, forcing him to move deeper into the labyrinth of desks. His breath hitches. Justice, Seth. Blind justice. He spits, a manic glint in his eyes, even as he winces from the pain. The kind they denied us. The pieces, long scattered and shrouded in the fog of your disgrace, coalesce with sickening clarity. The meticulous planning, the theatricality of each scene, the subtle, almost imperceptible signatures left behind. It wasn't about revenge on you, not entirely. It was about the system that had let the real monster walk free all those years ago. The system that had sacrificed your career to protect its own flawed image. It was never about me. You breathe. The realization a bitter taste on your tongue. It was about him. You mean the true target, the one who escaped your grasp in the original case. The one whose freedom had ignited this destructive firestorm. He laughs, a ragged, broken sound that scrapes against the quiet. He deserved to pay, they all did. And when you failed, when they failed, someone had to finish the job. He gestures wildly with his uninjured hand, encompassing the silent screens, the vast, echoing emptiness. This is where it all began, Seth. The numbers, the deals, the lies that bought his freedom. The corruption that buried the truth. You remember the old case files, the digital breadcrumbs you'd followed until they vanished into an impenetrable wall of corporate legalities. The specific, arcane financial maneuverings that had shielded the original killer from prosecution. Only a handful of people had understood those intricacies well enough to exploit them, to turn them into a weapon. And your former superior, with his decades in financial crime, had been one of them. The patterns, you press, forcing him to meet your gaze. The specific dates. The victims. They were all connected to the original cover-up, weren't they? Each note precise, each movement deliberate. A message for the complacent, the corrupt. A small, almost imperceptible glint beneath a discarded keyboard on one of the dead desks. You push him towards it, his injured hand flailing. You stoop, sweeping aside the dust, and retrieve it. It was a macabre calling card, a taunt from the killer to the victim's ghost. You remember seeing a similar cufflink, or at least a description of one, in the original evidence logs, listed as missing from the scene. This, you say, holding it up, the silver catching the dim light, this was found at the last scene, wasn't it? A final defiant signature. He tries to lunge, a desperate, clumsy attempt to snatch the cufflink, but you anticipate it, twisting his arm back, the pain sharp enough to make him cry out again. The footsteps are no longer just growing louder. They are here. The heavy oak door bursts open, revealing the silhouettes of uniformed figures, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The beam finds you, holding your former superior, the cufflink glinting in your hand. Seth Corbin. A voice booms, authoritative and laced with accusation. Let him go. You don't let go, not yet. You hold the cufflink aloft, a small, shining testament to a decades-long vendetta, a final, undeniable piece of the puzzle. He's the one, you announce, your voice ringing with a conviction born of bitter truth. He never stopped. He was just waiting for the right moment to finish what I couldn't. The beam of the flashlight settles on the bloodied hand of your former superior. The cufflink, cold and heavy in your palm, anchors a certainty that chills you to the bone. No more shadows, no more ghosts. Only a name, a motive, and a destination. The truth, finally, a jagged shard of glass cutting through the years of doubt. You slip inside, the air immediately cooler, thicker with the scent of dust and forgotten potential. Their blank faces, like 1,000 unseeing eyes, reflect nothing but your own distorted image. Each step you take echoes through the cavernous space, a drumbeat against the stillness. The floor, once vibrant with the frantic dance of brokers, is now a labyrinth of empty swivel chairs, their leather creaking softly in the phantom breeze of your passage. Cables, thick as pythons, lie coiled and lifeless beneath the raised floors, testament to a power that has long since fled. You know he is here. He has to be. This place, this monument to his downfall, is where his final act must unfold. And then you see him. The silhouette is stark against the faint emergency light filtering from a distant exit sign. He is not alone. Before him, bound to an overturned chair, is a colleague from your old division, the younger detective who had dismissed your theories, the one whose fresh face symbolized the institution that had cast you out. A final, cruel irony. The killer is not yet finished. He is preparing. A metallic glint catches the light as the figure turns slightly. Your breath hitches. This is it, the culmination of decades. It ends here, you call out, your voice hoarse, yet resonating with an authority you haven't felt in years. The sound shatters the fragile peace of the room, bouncing off the high ceilings. A challenge. The figure freezes, then slowly turns to face you. Even in the dimness, you recognize the sharp, almost predatory gleam in his eyes, the set of his jaw. It's the former partner, the man whose name was once synonymous with ambition and ruthlessness in these very halls. The architect of a brief, dazzling career that imploded under the weight of scandal. Always digging where you shouldn't. He takes a step closer, the object in his hand now clearly a letter opener, its blade catching the light like a sliver of ice. You were close even then, too close for comfort. The cufflink, you state, holding it up, letting its polished surface reflect the dim light, a tiny beacon of truth. It was yours, a gift from the firm, wasn't it? Everything, my reputation, my future, my very name. All gone because of their greed, their scapegoating. His gaze sweeps over the dead screens, a possessive, haunted look. This floor, it was my kingdom, and they burned it to the ground, with me inside. He gestures with the letter opener towards the bound detective. This one. He represents the new order. The one that replaced the old, the one that forgot the sacrifices, the betrayals. A fresh face to wipe away the stain. A fresh face for a final lesson. The murders, you press, your voice steady despite the tremor in your hands. They weren't random. Each one, a piece of your shattered life. A former colleague who testified against you. A reporter who sensationalized your fall. The broker who profited from your ruin. A score to settle, long overdue. And you, Seth, you were always the sour note. The one who wouldn't let it go. The one who saw too much. He takes another step, his eyes fixed on you, the letter opener a silent extension of his fury. You thought you had me, didn't you? All those years ago, you almost did. But I slipped through your fingers just as they slipped through mine. He gestures to the bound detective. And now, I get to finish what I started. A clean slate, Seth. A truly clean slate. The air crackles with unspoken threats. You know what he means. He intends to eliminate the last loose end, the bound detective. And then you. The dead screens seem to hum with a phantom energy, reflecting the ghost of a market crash, a life derailed, a mind twisted by decades of festering resentment. This is not a negotiation. This is a battle for finality, and only one of you will walk away from the echoes of this gilded cage. The air crackles with unspoken threats. You know what he means. The dead screens seem to hum with a phantom energy, reflecting the ghost of a market crash, the echoes of forgotten fortunes. The architect, a figure of meticulous shadow, takes a slow, deliberate step towards the bound detective. A glint of steel catching the faint emergency light. Your muscles coil, a tight spring within your weary frame. This is the precipice. Years of gnawing doubt, of phantom footsteps in empty corridors, of lives shattered by an unseen hand. It culminates here, amidst the silent terminals and dormant data streams. He shifts his weight, his focus momentarily split between his intended victim and your watchful eyes. It is the fraction of a second you have been waiting for, the hairline fracture in his carefully constructed control. A heavy, ergonomic chair, forgotten by some hurried traitor, sits within reach. Your hand shoots out, not towards a weapon, but towards the chair's solid base. With a primal roar that tears through the hushed tension of the floor, you launch it. The chair, a projectile of metal and worn fabric, spins through the air, striking the architect's arm with a jarring thud. The blade he held clatters to the polished floor, skittering beneath a desk like a frightened silver fish. He stumbles, a mask of surprise replacing his calm menace. This wasn't in his design. He hadn't accounted for the raw, desperate fury of a man stripped bare. Before he can recover, you are on him, a whirlwind of motion. You tackle him, sending both of you crashing over a low partition of cubicles. The impact jars your teeth, a sharp pain blooming in your shoulder, but you hold on, a vice grip around his neck. He tries to roll, to create distance, but you cling to him, the taste of metallic dust on your tongue. His hands find your throat, fingers like iron bands squeezing. The emergency lights dim further, flickering as if the building itself holds its breath. Pinpricks of light bloom at the edges of your vision, but the determination in your heart burns brighter. You think this is justice, Seth? He rasps, his voice strained. You think you understand? You gasp for air, forcing words through a constricted windpipe. I understand. No, Seth. I am the architect of truth. You failed them. You failed her. And I built this bridge of bodies to lead you back to what you missed. His words, choked and venomous, rip through the haze of pain. Her. A sudden, horrifying clarity strikes you. It wasn't just about punishing you. It was about a twisted, macabre lesson. He was showing you the pattern you'd overlooked, the design you'd been too blind to see. He was the one who had been there, observing, waiting, then executing. A sharp knee to your abdomen forces a grunt from your lips. Your grip loosens for a second, and he uses it, twisting free. He scrambles backwards, eyeing the fallen blade. But you are faster, adrenaline coursing through your veins like liquid fire. You kick out, catching his leg, sending him sprawling. His head cracks against the edge of a server rack with a sickening thud. He goes still. The only sound is your ragged breathing, the distant moan of the bound detective, and the faint rhythmic thrum of the building's ventilation system. You push yourself up, every muscle screaming in protest, and stagger towards him. His eyes are open, but unfocused, a thin trickle of crimson appearing at his temple. You don't raise it. Who saw? The forgotten, the first brick in your failure. A wave of exhaustion, profound and absolute, washes over you. The bound detective groans again, a plea for release. You drop the blade, its clatter echoing in the vast space. You stumble towards the detective, hands fumbling with the intricate knots, your fingers clumsy from the fight. As the last rope falls away, the distant wail of sirens pierces the quiet of the city, growing louder, closer. The illusion of isolation shatters. The first uniformed officer bursts through the main entrance, weapon drawn, followed by a flurry of others. They sweep the room, their movements precise and practiced. One officer moves to the architect, another immediately tends to the freed detective, while a third approaches you, questions already forming on his lips. You stand there, a ghost in the flashing lights, the stench of dust and old fear clinging to you. Your body aches, a symphony of bruises and strained muscles. But the gnawing emptiness in your gut has finally, irrevocably gone. Justice, raw and unyielding, has been served. A colleague, his face etched with concern, places a hand on your shoulder. "Seth," he says, his voice low. "It's over." You nod, unable to form words, the truth of his statement settling deep within your bones. The weight of decades, of every missed clue and every sleepless night, begins to lift. But it leaves behind an indelible mark, a landscape forever altered. The processing, the slow, arduous task of piecing yourself back together, has only just begun. The quiet hum of the building's systems now feels less like a threat and more like a gentle, if mournful, sigh. Each screen, a dormant eye, held the ghost of numbers, of fortunes won and lost, a silent testament to cycles of greed and despair. The air hung heavy, metallic, carrying the faint scent of ozone and forgotten caffeine. The hum of distant ventilation was the only sound, a low thrum that vibrated through the polished concrete beneath your worn boots. This wasn't a place you'd ever expected to find solace. Yet here you were, drawn by an unseen current, a need to stand at the precipice of a world that had once consumed you, now rendered inert. The truth, when it had finally surfaced, had been a bitter draft. A complex web spun from the threads of your own failures and the killer's meticulous design. The weight of decades, of every missed clue and every sleepless night, had begun to lift. Yes, but it left behind an indelible mark, a landscape forever altered within you. A shadow detached itself from the deeper gloom near the entrance, moving with a deliberate, unhurried pace. The lead detective, his face etched with a fatigue that mirrored your own, approached. Your involvement will be noted. Too much water under the bridge, too many reputations to consider. You nodded, the words echoing what you already knew, what you had already accepted. The old life, the badge, the structured pursuit of justice. It no longer fit. The man who had entered this labyrinth was not the man emerging from it. Your reputation, once shattered, was not fully mended, but pieced back together with a different kind of strength, like kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, highlighting the breaks as part of its history. "I don't expect it," you replied, your voice surprisingly steady. They were still present, but no longer commanding. You had finally looked them in the eye, and in doing so, had found a measure of peace. "So, what now?" the detective asked, his eyes scanning the cavernous space. Perhaps seeing the same emptiness, the same potential for new beginnings. A subtle shift occurred within you, a quiet epiphany born from the crucible of your recent ordeal. You had walked the path of obsession, albeit on the opposite side. They shift, they find new corners. The detective considered your words, a knowing look in his eyes. He understood the subtext, the unstated truth. You weren't returning to the precinct. Too obscure, too old, too. You wouldn't wear a uniform, wouldn't be bound by regulations. Your methods would be your own, unburdened by bureaucracy, driven by a singular, hard-won clarity. The killer's meticulousness had taught you to look for the invisible threads, the logic in the illogical, the quiet hum beneath the static. This was the reveal. Your path wasn't back to what was, but forward into what could be. A solitary guardian of the forgotten, drawn to the quiet hum of patterns others missed. "I suppose there are," you affirmed, a faint smile touching your lips, a rare sight these days. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of a quiet, fierce determination. The tension hadn't fully dissipated. It had merely transformed from the gnawing anxiety of the hunt to the focused energy of a new, self-imposed mission. The detective nodded, a silent acknowledgement of your unspoken understanding. He knew you wouldn't be truly gone. You would simply operate in the periphery, a vital, if unofficial, resource. The world had shifted on its axis for you. The midnight trading floor, with its dead screens and silent promise of new dawn, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for your next move.